Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that everything you think you know about who a narcissist ends up with is not what it seems? What if the real story is not about them finding someone better, but about you becoming someone stronger? Today, we are looking at a side of the story that many people never get to see. We are uncovering the truth behind the mask, the cycle that keeps repeating, and the surprising victory that does not belong to the narcissist, but to the person who walked away and found freedom. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may completely change how you view everything you survived and everything you are becoming. Narcissists do not end up with their perfect match. They end up with whoever can support their illusion for the longest time. That truth changes the way we understand their relationships. A narcissist moves through life protected by emotional walls built from insecurity, fear of rejection, and a deep need for validation. They are not searching for a partner the way emotionally healthy people do. They are not looking for true compatibility, emotional closeness, or a genuine bond. Instead, they are searching for someone who reflects back the image they desperately want to believe about themselves. Their ideal partner is not chosen because of love. Their ideal partner is chosen because of the role they play in maintaining a fantasy. The person they choose is often someone who feeds their ego without questioning it. Someone who does not yet see the cracks behind the image. Someone who unknowingly supports the belief that the narcissist is special, superior, desired, and always right. But the moment that illusion is challenged, everything begins to change. The moment a partner starts setting boundaries, asking questions, expecting accountability, or noticing contradictions, the narcissist often pulls away. They may become distant, they may become critical, they may punish the other person emotionally, or they may begin looking for someone new. Not because the relationship was failing, not because the partner was not enough, but because the illusion was no longer protected. This is why narcissists rarely stay connected to the strongest, most self-aware, or emotionally healthy people. Those people eventually see what is really happening. They stop reacting the way the narcissist expects. They stop feeding the ego. They stop supporting the performance. And once the illusion breaks, the narcissist feels exposed. So they move on, not to someone better, not to someone more valuable, but often to someone who has not yet recognized the pattern, someone who is still vulnerable to the same cycle. In the end, the person a narcissist stays with is not chosen from the heart. They are chosen out of emotional necessity, the necessity of protecting a fragile identity. What they are trying to preserve is not love. It is the illusion they depend on. And once you understand that narcissists choose people based on who can maintain their illusion, another truth becomes clear. Their relationships do not truly evolve. A narcissist does not move from one meaningful connection to another. They move from one repeating cycle to the next. This brings us to an important truth. They are not repeating relationships. They are repeating patterns. A narcissist is not chasing growth, emotional depth, or real intimacy. They are chasing a feeling. They are chasing a fantasy. They are chasing the emotional high that comes from being admired and idealized. They want the excitement of being placed on a pedestal. They want the comfort of being praised. They want the feeling of being important without being questioned. Because they are seeking the same emotional reward every time, they often follow the same script with every new partner. At first, there is intense attention. The admiration feels overwhelming. The affection feels powerful. The new partner feels seen, valued, and special. This is the phase many people call love bombing. It creates a dream, a world filled with promises, a future that seems perfect. Everything feels magical. Everything feels certain. But reality eventually arrives. It always does. And when the partner begins to see the narcissist as a normal human being with flaws and contradictions, the script starts to change. The admiration begins to fade. Disappointment grows. Criticism appears. Distance increases. The narcissist begins to devalue the person they once idealized. Not because the partner changed, not because the partner failed, but because the fantasy is disappearing. The image they depended on is no longer being reflected back in the same way. And when that happens, they often start searching for someone new. Not because they want a different story, but because they want to restart the same story. They hope the next person will keep the illusion alive longer. They hope the ending can be delayed. But the ending never truly changes. That is why so many former partners tell remarkably similar stories. That is why the same patterns appear again and again. That is why their relationship history often sounds like a collection of repeated experiences. They are not creating new emotional journeys. They are recycling the same emotional cycle. Until they confront the deeper issues within themselves, the cycle continues. It does not matter who stands beside them. The pattern remains. And once you realize they are repeating patterns rather than building meaningful relationships, you begin to understand something even more important. At their core, they are not searching for connection. They are searching for control. This leads us to another difficult truth. A narcissist often chooses comfort over connection and control over intimacy. For many people who loved a narcissist, this is one of the hardest realities to accept. While you were offering honesty, they were protecting an image. While you were building something real, they were managing appearances. Real intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires the courage to be seen exactly as you are. It requires honesty about weaknesses, fears, and imperfections. But vulnerability feels dangerous to a narcissist. It threatens the image they work so hard to maintain. It exposes the insecurities they spend years hiding. Instead of choosing relationships that encourage authenticity, they often choose relationships that feel emotionally safe for their ego. They choose people who are less likely to challenge them, less likely to question them, less likely to disrupt the illusion. True emotional connection requires accountability. It requires honesty. It requires mutual effort. But control requires none of those things. Control only requires distance. It only requires power. It only requires one person directing the emotional flow of the relationship. This is why strong partners can feel threatening to a narcissist. This is why they struggle when someone sees through the mask. This is why they often retreat when a relationship begins to demand genuine emotional depth. Love asks for openness. Control asks for protection. And when forced to choose, they often choose the path that protects them, even when that choice leaves the relationship empty. The cycle continues. They pursue admiration instead of intimacy. They pursue validation instead of truth. They pursue emotional safety instead of personal growth. And every new relationship becomes another place to hide rather than heal. Because deep down, being truly known feels more frightening to them than being alone. And once you understand that control matters more to them than intimacy, another truth becomes impossible to ignore. A relationship built on control cannot survive when one person discovers their own worth. That brings us to another powerful realization. A narcissist rarely ends up with the strong, awakened person who outgrows them. Not because that person was lacking, not because that person was not valuable, but because growth changes the entire dynamic. The moment you begin healing, things shift. The moment you start recognizing patterns, things change. The moment you stop accepting less than you deserve, the old system stops working. You stop accepting blame that does not belong to you. You stop chasing approval. You stop allowing someone else's emotions to control your self-worth. And whether you realize it or not, that transformation makes you someone they can no longer easily manipulate. Strength exposes weakness. Confidence exposes insecurity. Emotional awareness exposes emotional immaturity. Your growth shines light on truths they have spent years avoiding. That light becomes uncomfortable. It reveals the gap between who they pretend to be and who they really are. Instead of growing alongside you, they often pull away from you. Instead of facing the truth, they search for someone who has not yet seen it. Someone who still confuses intensity with love. Someone who still believes the performance. Someone who still trusts the mask. Your growth removes you from their cycle, not because your value decreased, but because your clarity increased. You learned the language of emotional truth. You stepped out of the role they expected you to play. And once you stop participating in the script, they lose the ability to control the story. In reality, your awakening is what prevents them from ending up with you. And it is also what protects you from ever needing to go back. When you finally rise above the confusion and chaos, another truth becomes clear, one that destroys the belief that narcissists somehow upgrade when they move on. The next person is not an upgrade. They are simply a replacement for the illusion that stopped working. You were never replaced because you lacked value. You were replaced because you stopped playing the role that kept the fantasy alive. Narcissists do not search for better partners. They search for new sources of validation, and that is a very different thing. They look for easier targets. They look for people who have not yet started questioning the story, people who still believe every grand gesture, people who still see charm as character, people who still mistake flattery for genuine love. From the outside, the narcissist's new relationship may seem exciting. It may look perfect. It may even appear better than the relationship they had before. But now you understand something important. A narcissist does not create a new relationship. They repeat an old one. What appears to be an upgrade is often just the beginning of a familiar cycle. The same intense attention, the same overwhelming affection, the same promises, the same emotional rush, and eventually the same confusion, the same disappointment, the same pain. They did not replace you with someone better. They replaced you with someone who has not yet recognized the pattern, someone who has not yet seen behind the mask, someone who has not yet reached the point where questions begin to replace blind trust. In time, that person may experience the same things you experienced, the same emotional ups and downs, the same manipulation, the same cycle of being idealized and then devalued. That is why your healing matters so much. You broke free from the illusion. You stepped outside their control. You stopped living inside the reality they created and started living inside the truth. The new person is not experiencing a better version of the narcissist. They are simply experiencing an earlier chapter of the same story, a chapter you already survived, a chapter you already understand. The narcissist does not upgrade. They reset the cycle. They start over. They hope the illusion lasts longer this time, yet they never realize that the real problem is not the people they choose. The real problem is the part of themselves they refuse to face. And once you understand that their new beginning is often just a recycled illusion, another truth becomes easier to see. At the center of every new relationship they enter is the same pattern. The person a narcissist ends up with is usually someone who does not yet see the truth. This is not a criticism of that person. It is simply a reflection of where they are on their journey. In many ways, it is the same place you once stood. A place filled with hope, a place filled with trust, a place where love is given freely, a place where warning signs are often mistaken for passion. Narcissists rarely choose partners because of compatibility. They choose partners because those partners are still open to the fantasy. They are still willing to believe. They are still vulnerable to charm. They have not yet learned how manipulation can disguise itself as romance. The new partner is not better. They are simply earlier in the process. They still believe they are entering a beautiful love story. They do not yet realize they are entering a cycle that many others have already experienced. They hear the sweet words. They see the grand gestures. They feel the intensity, and they believe it all comes from genuine love. What they do not see is how these behaviors can become tools of control. They do not notice the emotional dependency forming. They do not realize how quickly admiration can turn into criticism. They do not yet understand how rapidly affection can disappear when they begin expressing needs of their own. The narcissist holds tightly to them in the beginning because the illusion feels safe again. The performance is working again. The mask is being believed again. Everything feels familiar. Everything feels comfortable. But time has a way of revealing what charm tries to hide. Eventually, the cracks begin to appear. The confusion starts growing. The inconsistencies become harder to ignore. The emotional exhaustion slowly takes its place. And just like you once did, this person may begin asking questions. They may begin noticing things that do not make sense. They may begin feeling that something is wrong. They do not see the truth yet, but eventually many people do, because illusions are difficult to maintain forever, especially when reality keeps exposing them. And once you realize that narcissists often choose people who have not yet recognized the truth, another pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Their relationships often feel empty because they are not building partnerships. They are building stages. To everyone watching from the outside, it may look like love. There are pictures. There are affectionate words. There are dramatic moments. There are public displays of happiness. But beneath those appearances, there is often very little emotional balance. There is little mutual growth. There is little true reciprocity. What the narcissist is really creating is a platform, a place where they can perform, a place where they can receive admiration, a place where they can maintain the image they want others to see. The new partner does not recognize this immediately. They believe they are entering a relationship built on shared dreams and mutual connection. Meanwhile, the narcissist is quietly shaping the story, assigning roles, controlling narratives, positioning themselves at the center of attention. The other person becomes part of the performance. Their role is to validate, to admire, to comfort, to support, to applaud, not to challenge, not to question, not to expose reality. This is why the beginning often feels so powerful. The narcissist knows how to create excitement. They know how to create emotional highs. They know how to make someone feel chosen. They know how to make ordinary moments feel extraordinary. But performances cannot continue forever. Eventually, real life enters the picture. Real life brings accountability. Real life brings compromise. Real life brings vulnerability. And those are often the very things the narcissist struggles with most. When the partner begins asking for something genuine, the performance starts to weaken. The stage lights begin to fade. The narcissist becomes distant. They become critical. They become defensive. Sometimes they become cruel. Not because the partner changed, but because the script is changing. And without control, they do not know how to continue the performance. This is why their relationships often feel dramatic. Not because the emotions are deeper, but because the relationship was built on performance rather than partnership. And when the audience stops applauding, the narcissist often starts searching for a new stage. Once you see that, another truth becomes clear. Every stage needs someone who does not realize they are acting in a play. And that brings us to something deeply important. The healed person leaves the story. The unhealed person becomes the next character. This can be painful to accept, yet it can also be incredibly freeing. The moment you began healing, everything changed. The moment you questioned the narrative, the hold weakened. The moment you stopped responding to every emotional trigger, you stepped off the stage. You left the role they had assigned to you. And once that happened, the performance could no longer continue in the same way. Healing is what opens the exit door. It rarely happens all at once. It happens through small moments of clarity, through difficult realizations, through painful truths, through the slow process of seeing things exactly as they are. Healing teaches you to recognize manipulation. Healing teaches you to recognize control. Healing teaches you to separate intensity from genuine love. As your awareness grows, the illusion loses power. While your healing sets you free, someone else may still be standing where you once stood, still hopeful, still trusting, still believing, not because they are weak, but because they have not yet reached the same level of awareness. They still see the charm. They still see the promises. They still see the fantasy. They do not yet realize they have stepped into a role that has already been played by others. The script feels new to them. The story feels unique.